I want to welcome Danny Briner to the podcast show.
I like a football player. I feel like I don't have a number, so I'll do initials. There's a spot right there.
Bam.
Boom.
Bro, thank you so much, man, for coming down, man. And
my pleasure.
we've been talking about meeting for the past 4 years, hadn't it been? 4 years.
It's been 4 years.
You've been helping me, doing a major amount of stuff.
I think it was probably May 2020 because it was in the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
So it would be almost exactly 4 years now.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, man.
Time flies.
That time does fly. So, man, tell me your story. Tell me your story with the drums. And before we get started with how we met, tell me a little bit of background history how you started with the drums.
That is a loaded question. So I've been playing drums pretty much as long as I can remember. I was banging on little pots and pans since I was 3 years old. There are actually pictures of me as a little 3-year-old kid playing an animal snare drum that I later found out was actually made by Noble and Cooley, which is one of the coolest drum facts I know. And I've loved drums since the minute I can remember. According to my parents, I haven't stopped. I got my first kit when I was 8. Started taking lessons shortly thereafter, and I've been playing for years. At this point in time, I've played pretty much semi-professionally since I was about 14 or 15, meaning I make a little bit of money playing music, but I have real day jobs to pay the bills. I have turned down gigs before because they were too much and couldn't afford me. And then once the family comes around, you're just like, well, I gotta pay the bills, unfortunately. So I feel like there's a lot of good played with a lot of really amazing people, including big names or people related to big names in my life. Right now I play with kind of a party rock variety band in Minnesota. I moved to Minnesota about 8 years ago from Atlanta, born and raised here. Or in Atlanta. I still hear when I'm in Georgia, I say here. But yeah, so I've been playing drums for a very, very long time. I fell in love with custom drums years ago. But my first custom drum was actually a segment shell drum that I still have, even though I never play it. I can't get rid of it because it's sentimental. But I fell in love with custom drums. I worked with, in the past, Shine drums and Spawn drums many moons ago, just as an artist. Still have some of my Spawn drums. You make great stuff, but different world. And then what brought me to Outlaw, we'll segue nicely into that story. When I used to live in Atlanta, I used to go to Guitar Center, and once I saw this Outlaw drum in Guitar Center that had what we refer to as the distressed finish, that most people call the tree trunk finish.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the nicest drum I've ever seen. And I played it, and I looked at the price tag, and I was like, nope, that's not going to happen. Granted, this was a while ago. This was probably 10 or 12 years ago. It was probably one of the very early ones. So starting from that day, I've always kept my eye on Outlaw. In the middle of COVID, we all had extra income because we weren't going anywhere. And I was just like, I need something because I'm depressed because I'm in the house like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at snare drums to buy because I am a snare drum-aholic, as those who know me know. And it's gotten worse since you and I started working together. But yeah, I was looking around, and I think I was just on Reverb one day, and I saw some Outlaws for sale that I saw were actually coming from Outlaw. So I said, and at the time you were donating some of the proceeds to COVID response groups, which I thought was awesome. So I was like, now's a good time to buy one. It was much more in my price range, also years later, and having more real jobs. So that's how I started, and I reached out and started making the drum. And I loved the process that you try to videotape everything, send videos of your drum being made, just enough to keep people seeing the process. I loved that. And you and I started talking shortly thereafter. Again, it was middle of COVID. I was also kind of trying to figure out how you could afford to make the drum that you made me when I got it, and it was one of the best sounding drums I've ever heard. I was like, there's no way this drum should have cost what it did. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
And Michael and I have talked about this, so for the people at home,
Yeah.
he knows this story very well
I do
because he
know it
was
very well.
intimately involved. And so I started kind of digging in more, and I saw a lot of content that I was like, I see this, Outlaw is really struggling. Now, I didn't know the size of Outlaw at the time, but I know I love their drums. So I reached out to Michael and said, hey, I think something's going on and I want to help because in my real life, in my day job, I am a supply chains and operations expert, meaning I really utilize, for the most part, I help utilize kind of computer systems and softwares to help companies grow and develop their supply chains and operations and streamline their processes and things like that. And over the course of my time, I've had my own small company, and I've worked with some other small companies trying to keep it in and around the drum field that to help people like Michael, who's an artist. Anyone who owns an Outlaw drum knows they are impeccably created. There's an artistry to it, but I've also found sometimes artists don't recognize all the business pieces.
Business sucks. Business sucks.
Business sucks.
It does.
But I like that part a little bit. So Michael and I started talking, and I offered to help him with some things. And really, we just kind of, the business and friendship blossomed from there.
Yeah.
Started talking about how products should be costed, how to make sure you're making money and not losing stuff. Because again, this was COVID. And I think and you can speak for yourself here, Michael, but what we talked about is you weren't realizing you were losing more money than you were making on every drum you sent out.
Yeah.
So that makes it very hard for a company to survive. And it's also something that's really, unfortunately, common, which is why I kind of noticed it real fast. I was like, something's not right here. So from there, we started looking at our price models and our equipment and our sources to really change the direction of Outlaw and get through COVID, which was just difficult, right?
Yeah.
For everybody, for small businesses. Many, many, many small businesses folded and went under. So our goal was to not fold, not go under, and come out stronger at the other side, which is pretty much where we're at now, and starting to really grow things, grow the social media, grow the sales, grow everything. New partnerships like the WTS. I'm pointing to a kit. I don't know if people can see. And for me, it's been just beneficial because I've gotten to play more and more of these drums, which I kind of sought after 10 or 12 years ago. I'm now playing almost exclusively, and I love it. And every show I have, somebody mentions my kit somehow or another, which is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
They really stand out.
Well, you know how to operate that kit. I noticed when I was watching you play, and you would strategically go in and just start almost putting into the groove as you're tightening and it almost don't even look like you're doing anything to it, but you're
it's a
changing
little
the
harder
sound.
on this one because it's not quite perfectly set up for me. But yeah, I've gotten used to, especially with some of the bands I've played with, tuning them on the fly. At least, especially the snare drum, because I will tune snare drums. When you play with a variety type band, we're playing country and rock and pop punk and like more top 40 kind of stuff. And I will tune the snare on the fly between songs. And when you really want to minimize downtime, you have to do that quickly. And the fact that I can do that now, which I never was able to do before, I kind of had to pick that sweet spot in the middle and use it for everything. I can tune songs. So when we play country, I'll tune it down a little bit more. When we play the pop punk stuff, I'll crank it up. And most of the rock and 80s stuff, I'll put right in the middle. So really grown to love the WTS stuff too. Become kind of an unofficial spokesperson.
People that kind of make that switch to the Welch tuning, it's almost kind of like, it takes a while though. It takes a while because forget how aggravating it is to tune your drum set when you're trying to tune it up on the fly, or because a lot of times you got to get on your back just about and tune up the bottom heads with. I mean, that's very aggravating. With this, you could just turn it one knob, right?
Yeah, it's quite unbelievable. I told Sam Welsh this story too. The story of how I switched when I first saw it. I was like, oh, that looks neat. It's probably just a gimmick. And Michael was building a snare for somebody else that was a walnut, and black walnut was on my top of the list of snares I wanted. And this was early in our process, right? When we started working together. and Michael was building a snare, and he built it in the distressed tree trunk finish, which, as I've already said, I am a big fan of. That is not important at all. And so he texted me, and he says he was upset. He was like, "Oh, I screwed up this shell.
Yeah.
I was supposed to do a smooth finish, and I
Yep.
did the distress, and it's already drilled and ready to go." And I was like, "It's already drilled for WTS." I said, "Look, I'll buy the hardware. Give me the shell,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens." And he sent me the drum, and after 2 shows, it became my go-to snare drum. It still is my number 1 snare drum. The only reason I don't use it live is I now have a matching WTS Maverick Series snare with my kit that I use primarily, but it's still the other drum I bring with me everywhere I go. And it became, just like I was talking about, going up and back in tuning songs. I was playing with a country band at the time, and being able to tune up and tune down between songs was just, it blew me away. And it sounds incredible. The Outlaw shell, minimal contact with the WTS hardware. And I was like, all right, I'm in. I get it. And then Michael was building me my first kit, which I had saved up for quite a while. And we're like, well, should it be WTS or should it be lugs? And I was like, I'm still worried about what's going on with tuning or changing heads. Because if I break a head, which doesn't happen often, I don't know. So I had him build me a regular kit with lugs, which, if you haven't seen it, is gorgeous and is still one of my favorite kits on the planet. And I was playing that for about a year, and then Michael built a WTS kit out of pine, which we've started to use a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
And he built one for another one of our clients, John G. I forgot how to say his last name.
John Giavalvo.
Giavalvo.
I think I say it, but I can't say names, so I don't know.
and this was right before, my kit was finished, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I started hearing the videos of it, or because Michael was asking me, do you want WTS or do you want regular? And we opted to go with regular hardware. And then he starts playing this other kit he built for John G in the pine, and I was like, wow, that tone is incredible. All right, building WTS. Let's do a WTS one also. Because fortunately, in working with Michael, I do get a little bit of a discount, and I was like, what I had saved up for my original Outlaw kit could now get me 2. So
yeah,
I had him build me both. And I planned on just using the WTS in the studio. Because, as we talked about, you can tune to whatever tuning you want. It's very quick. It's very easy. I got the kit, and it sounded so good. Still does. I'm like, well, I guess this is what I'm playing out now. So that's how I've gotten used to using it between shows. I live in Minnesota now, so it is very, very, very cold. And my drums stay in the garage in their cases for the most part, at least the touring kit, because I play almost every weekend. And it's really nice to just get your kit set up and take about 30 seconds to tune. Like, I can tune the whole kit in about a minute or less.
Yeah.
On a bad day.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was just worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what converted me potentially for good to WTS.
Well, because rooms are different, and I think a lot of church drummers, being that they got a lot of different drummers, they don't really know how to tune. I feel like it would be a good drum kit for praise and worship kind of vibes, because a lot of times a drummer will they have tape and all kinds of stuff, because rooms are different, and which room will sound good here, you take it somewhere else and it may not be a good sound. I
mean, we even had to dial this one in while we were getting ready, but when you find the right combination of heads, it just sounds so good.
Yeah, we're taking questions here on TikTok too. If you got a question, put it in the comment right here. So let me ask you a question too. So you were talking about earlier about drumsticks, when you was talking about drumsticks and how, because you actually had a drumstick business where you made custom drumsticks, and you're very picky about your drumsticks too. I noticed, just by grabbing some of the sticks that I've made, you like them very big, fat, obnoxious sticks. What size are those?
Yeah, so currently I'm playing the Vader Power 3As. So they're a little bit longer version of the Fatback 3As. I have played lots of sticks in my life. I have found that Vader lasts the best for me. I played Vic Firth, Dave Weckles for years, but it really came down to just my style of playing. And well, let me rephrase that. When my when my drumstick company folded because I had a very uh, let's just say unscrupulous partner,
Mm-hmm.
I went to Vader and eventually settled on those because I do like a longer stick because I'm tall, I have longer reach, so I kind of like to sit a little back from the kit more than people would. So that's where I came up with that stick. It works for me. What I've noticed is when I use a little bit heavier stick, it helps me settle in timing.
Mm-hmm.
It slows down my swing just enough that really helps fit a groove and helps with timing. But again, as you said, having a drumstick company for a while, I really started to understand the importance of a stick to people in the weights, the feels, and how it affects playing style and how the different wood affects
It's all about
each.
that bounce too,
Yep.
isn't it? That bounce and that even like the tip,
Yep.
the way that the tips are
Yep.
done.
So I always like the ball tip more than the standard teardrop. The Vaders have a little bit more oval, but that gives you really good stick definition.
Yeah.
That's always just been
Yeah.
what I go to, but it is very much personal preference.
Yeah.
I think the length and the kind of girth to the stick are really the key for each individual. You've got to fit your hand size.
Yeah.
We were doing our demos earlier, and when you don't fit your hand size, you drop them a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But even when you do, you still drop them.
Yeah.
It just happens.
So, let me ask you a question. What do you look for even before Outlaw or anything like? What do you look for in a drum? Like when you're trying to get a drum kit to go gig with and play with, you look for like convenience, size wise that you can box up, or do you kind of look more towards like sound and presence?
That's a great question. You didn't prep me for that one.
Sorry.
I'm just teasing. That's good.
What's up, Mr. Jones? Hey, you got a question? Put some questions right here. We're doing a live podcast. Sorry.
No, quite all right. So for me, first and foremost is sound, and sound is paramount. I like a rich, full tone. That is my sound. I am not saying that's for everybody. Some people like to tune things a little bit higher. Sometimes, everybody has their sound. But for me, I like that big, rich, deep sound. Tone is paramount, but I am actually very picky from a visualization standpoint, more than a lot of people say you should be, right?
Yeah.
I want a kit that looks great, that is visually catching, that adds to the experience of seeing the show, that drummers come up and say, that is so cool. So when I started working with custom companies, I really started with Sparkles. That was where I love Sparkle drums. I thought they looked amazing on stage. They really catch the light. But I also love the look of natural wood grain. So when I started doing more custom work, I had a kit made that was like a black to green burst, which was my favorite finish. And now with my Outlaws, I've kind of kept going past more toward the natural wood grains because just the natural beauty of wood can be stunning. So, Michael and I have been talking a lot about natural finishes versus sparkles. That's been a big part of my trip here and the future of Outlaw. And it's really, I think the visual component of a kit is almost as important as sound.
Yeah.
Not completely, but especially if you play out a lot.
Yeah. So what happens when a band said, or the guy said they want you to start playing on an electric drum kit? What do you do then?
Yeah. So that has come up recently. This one I was prompted for. No, it was prompted in conversation. I do not like playing electronic drums live, electric kits live. I just feel they don't have the response. They don't have the energy. There's just something yes, you can get any sound you want. Yes, with a smaller venue, you can get a lot more controlled, but so much can go wrong. If an electronic kit, if a pad goes out, if the cables go out, if the power goes out, you can't use them. And I just don't feel you can be as animated. And I'm a pretty animated live drummer.
Yeah. It takes away the percussion. Like it takes away the feel of the instrument, the dynamics, where you don't have to really play with dynamics too much with that. I mean, I guess some of them are kind of geared toward, but for the most part, like an acoustic set, you really got to know how to play it soft.
Yep.
And then hard too, right?
Yeah, and that's a lot of it, right? Whether you're playing with dynamics, not just the drums, but with the cymbals, knowing the equipment for the gig. right? If you're playing in a small club, you may not want to use all your 20-inch crashes. You may need to bring that down. You may need to look at different options. We were talking about the Sabian FRX series versus my normal crashes, just because one of the issues my singer was having was the bleed of all the high frequencies. So things that you can do to fit your style and your band and all that. For me, and I'm not saying there isn't a place for electronic kits either. Like, I think the Roland V drums are still one of the most incredible
Yeah.
inventions over the last who knows how many years. But for me, like, that's a house, you know, type of practice kit type of thing. I don't want to play it live.
Yeah.
But it's also personal preference. So I also won't slag those who do.
Yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah. So how do you enter, like, so for instance, like, I know it's hard when you have kids and wife and everything like that, and you're trying to consistently stay practiced up. So do you set your drums like back up to practice on, or it's like, do you try to get like a little practice in before the gig? Or because it is a lot, people don't realize how much trouble it is, and it ain't really, it's not trouble, but it's just a lot of work setting up your drums, getting it right, especially if you play with a big set.
So that's a great question. I am very fortunate that I have multiple kits. At this point,
So you have like a practice kit set up ready?
So I have one kit in my
Ooh.
studio, always set up, ready to go, which is actually my Outlaw Maple Cherry kit right now. I have one kit in storage and two kits on the shelf in my studio, but I have my cherry maple set up almost all times in my studio. So fortunately, I have one tour kit kind of ready to throw in the car or the van, ready to go, one in the studio. And I used to say that my ideal number of kits was 3, because especially when I was younger, I had a main band that I played with out consistently. That kit was always in the touring van. I'd have the one in my house for practice, and I'd have one for other gigs, right? So if I had a pickup or a fill-in or things like that, I could just grab that kit. So for me, for a while, 3 was the magic number. Then I grew up and became a collector of sorts. I do not advise it. It is expensive. It's an expensive hobby. No, but I love it. I've bought and sold kits throughout the years also. But the kits I have now, I just can't bring myself to get rid of. Even the ones I don't use a lot anymore, they're sentimental. I love them. They look great. So I haven't moved off them yet. But that's really what I do. And then to answer the question about practice, so I play frequently enough where I don't have a lot of practice time with the job and the family and all the things that come with adulting. But when we have new songs that we're working up for the band, we don't have a lot of time to rehearse either.
Will they like send you the tracks and then you got to practice like ahead of time?
It depends on the song. So once we know what the songs are, we normally try to learn in groups of 3 or 5 new songs. Our current set has about 50 to 60 songs in it, and we'll learn 3-5 songs at a time. So I will just work on those through listening, and then hopefully get a few times to woodshed them, to go down to my studio and woodshed the songs a bit. I normally make my own version of a chart that I do that helps me speed along that process as well.
Okay.
I do what I call a lyrical chart, where I'll kind of map out the songs using the lyrics and where the key hits are and what the beats are, and that helps me learn a song very quickly. And then if we're going to throw it into the set sooner, I can always bring that little chart with me. So that helps well. And so we'll normally just try to run through it a sound check or 2. Or if we don't, we might wait till we do a band rehearsal, which is about every 6 to 8 weeks. Or, when we have downtime, we try to stick in some rehearsals. But I've done fill-ins too, where it's like, here's the things, I'll just chart them out, and I'll bring my own version of a fake book with me.
I see. Sorry. Heck yeah. So what do you think as far as like what inspires you to go and play? Like, so for instance, do you have to get inspired to play, or do you just kind of practice for on the lines of like, this is a habit? Sometimes I feel like I wish practicing can become a habit, because sometimes it's hard for me to go and practice. Like, I feel like sometimes everything has to line up just right to set up the perfect practice. Or do you practice like playing along to songs, or would you practice like playing like your rudiments, or do you just maybe just practice on like a practice pad? Just like when you go and travel, because you travel all around for just work and everything. So and obviously I don't know. Danny takes care of all. Like when you message Outlaw Drums on Facebooks and anything like that. This is the guy you're talking to.
It's normally
most
me.
of the time.
Not always.
Not always.
Not always, but it's normally me because I spend lots of times at computers and it's easy for me.
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
also the ones who do a lot of quotes, so be nice.
Yeah, he definitely hook you up with a good quote for sure.
So when it comes to practicing, it's kind of all of the above. Most of the time, I like to play along with songs. I kind of have my drum playlist that gives me a variety of songs from just straight ahead groove to more progressive things like Rush and Dream Theater that are on kind of my practice playlist. Uh, I haven't been taking a practice pad with me as much as I should. I actually, on this trip down here and for vacation coming up, I did bring a pair of sticks and a practice pad with me because I don't have gigs for 3 weeks. So just to keep myself loose, because I've noticed when you do a lot of these, I'm sure a lot of you know when you have these long 3-4 hour bar gigs and venues where you're the only band, they get grueling.
Yeah.
And you're playing, either 360s or 2 90-minute sets sometimes. So when you're off for 3 or 4 weeks, you get really stiff. So I did bring a practice pad to try to kind of keep my wrists loose. But normally I play along with songs. I don't just go woodshed things as much anymore. I wish I did. I know you and I were talking yesterday. Like I feel like I've gotten stagnant in some of that because like muscle memory plays a lot of the same fills and the same songs. So that's something I try to work on. But yeah, when I'm practicing at home, it's normally songs from my songs I like to play drums playlist.
Hey, heck yeah. So I was going to ask you a question here. So we talk about endorsements here, like endorsements. A lot of people want endorsements, and and it's weird. Like everybody seems like they want an endorsement or feel like they are at par for an endorsement. When you think about an endorsement, because a lot of people sends us a lot of endorsements requests, and we got to go through that stuff and fill it out. Do we, look for like people that are skill level, or is it heart, passion, combination of everything they're following? What do you think like requires like to get an endorsement?
So, this is something you and I've talked about for a very long time, pretty much almost since day one, is the first and most important things is an endorsement is not free drums. Period.
Yeah.
You can cut that out and paste it. An endorsement is not free
Oh
drums.
my God. If people don't, they expect that free
They expect
drum,
that.
man.
An endorsement is a mutual beneficial relationship between a company and an artist, right? What do we mean by that? What do I mean by that? It means both parties, the artist and the company, need to get something in return for that relationship. It should be a good mutual relationship. For an artist, they may get discounted up to free drums and potentially some publicity. For the company, we and any other company is going to get publicity, their product in front of people, that sort of thing. It is very, very important with endorsements and with artists that you truly love and support the product that you're trying to get an endorsement.
Yeah.
Let me tell everybody, we can tell the difference between someone who is asking for an endorsement because they want free or discounted drums versus someone who is an Outlaw fan that wants to see if they can be a member of the family. Because we really do try to treat all our artists as family. And, those who are kind of in the circle of artists, fortunately myself included as well now, we know the difference. And you will hear them they will come back. And I will tell you, we do not have any artists on our roster who get free drums. Period. They are all paid for.
Facts.
Right?
Facts.
But every artist on our roster gets discounts. We do send them things for free, but they're normally not drums. Because we want to support them like they support us. And you will see all of our artists, Emily, Patty Cake,
Chris
Chris
McCart.
McCart, they're tagging us, they're putting them in their videos, they're building their fan base. Jada also.
Yeah.
They're tagging, they're posting, they're supporting us, they're talking about product. That's what we need.
Yeah, that's what we need.
What we need as a company is those endorsements to translate into sales, because that's how we grow this business.
Yeah.
So us giving somebody free drums isn't going to work unless you have 1 million plus followers and you say, I think you should buy this snare for A, B, C, and D. And of your 1 million, 5 people come and buy snare drums, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right. So we like kind of people to understand that influencer level is extremely difficult to get to. And even we don't have it right now. We don't have anyone of that level who is turning enough people to buy Outlaw to warrant free drums.
Yeah, like, he's playing that, I'm gonna go buy their kit
Right.
because he's playing it, you know.
Right. And we have some extraordinarily high value people who play Outlaw drums.
Yeah. I mean,
that
even
actually
Eddie
endorse
Fisher,
other
as big as
companies.
he is, you know.
Eddie Fisher.
Yeah.
Kent Schuler.
Yeah.
Kent did a video I say a few weeks ago, it's probably several months ago now, where he was like, I'm getting ready to do a studio session, I'm pulling out my Outlaw snare, and he like went through the session with that snare. Like, that is the best kind of thing we can get, not a free drum.
Yeah.
Right? Even he didn't pay for that drum.
Yeah.
So when it comes to endorsements, like I cannot spell out enough how important that mutually beneficial relationship is to the process.
And plus, it's like, how do you know you love it if you never played it before?
Well, yeah, that's the thing that gets me. The many people, and they always get surprised when I come back and they're like, "Well, do you own any Outlaw drums?" Well, no, I've seen them and I like them.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know you like them? What do you like about them? Outlaws, for the most part, were 98% custom.
Yeah.
You could play one drum that's a pine drum, one drum that's a maple drum, one that's a purple heart. And what is it you like about it? The tonal qualities, the reclaimed wood, right? Most of our stuff is reclaimed wood.
Yep.
Not all of it, but most of it. What you like about it?
Yeah. Exactly.
This is our new favorite topic of discussion.
That
right
is,
now.
I tell you, because I'm gonna tell you this. Everybody's asking about this. And speaking of what folks are asking about too, man, we got to talk about this bad boy right here. That bad boy right there, hot on mighty nose. Woo!
This is another one that just shocks me that it's still here. When we first created this series, I played this drum. Michael sent it to me. I used it in a studio gig in Atlanta for about 3 or 4 different songs. Did our own content with my producer there, and we just did some more playing with it. Just sounds incredible. And again, it's this uniqueness of it. You find me another drum that looks like this.
Yeah.
And sounds this good.
Yeah.
Period.
Because we did a sound file on this thing, and just earlier it's going to be in the YouTube video that we're going to put together with all this content. Going to mix all this content and put it all into one cool video. And if y'all want to check some of those videos out, it's at Outlaw Drums YouTube channel. There's a new video coming out. I'm gonna try to get one like once a week, a new one. But so, and how we can give back to the community, because a lot of people can't afford $1,000 snare drum, especially drummers that are gigging out, making their living while playing drums. Which that's why we were just trying to give away drums to some drummers that would not never spend that kind of money on a snare drum like that.
I will say, and this is a conversation we have here around Outlaw a lot, is yes, it is very hard sometimes to afford a custom Outlaw snare drum, but it's handmade, not overseas. Every inch of detail is looked in these snare drums. And I've recently thought about, I'm going to argue that not every drummer can afford it. Not every drummer might be able to afford it at first, but it's like a tool in your arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of went through this when we were doing some play-alongs earlier, especially like this WTS snare. It's 15 snares in one. And I remember one of my favorite shows that I ever went to, I saw John Mayer with Steve Jordan, I don't know, long time ago. And about every third song, Steve Jordan was changing his snare to kind of fit the mood of the song. Now, when you're Steve Jordan and you're on a huge tour and you have drum techs and 4 or 5 different snares, you can afford to do that. But what if you can't? One snare to rule all, right?
Yeah.
This is a great example of it. This is the 13 7x5, the Maverick series. Really gets you everything that you could possibly want. My main snare is a 14x7 WTS. Yes, more expensive than others, but I use it for everything. Everything. And I'm one who's collected way too many snares over the years.
Yeah.
It actually makes me feel bad when I look at my snare collection and I'm like, I use 3 and I have 25. And the 3 I use right now, for the record, are my WTS Walnut, my WTS Pine that matches my kit, and my WTS Spalted Maple. And then I have the Outlaw Burl and Maple one also that I like, that I use at home on my practice kit a lot too. But yeah, it's just because of the versatility of them.
So what makes that drum so special? Like, what were you doing with it? Like earlier, you was
Yeah. So with the WTS and the Maverick series too, what really makes it versatile, especially with the trick strainer, which I don't think we put the trick on all of them. We really should.
some of them had
Some of them had the trick because we had some left over. Some people got free upgrades. And this one does have the trick strainer, especially with the trick strainer. In this one drum, you can do so many different things from a tuning perspective, from a playing perspective. And in the video that hopefully Michael might weave into this a little bit, you can see you've got a tuning range from low and deep if you're playing blues or country, or you want that really robust balls out sound, or you can tune it up and crank it and get that high pitched funk kind of snare that you might normally associate with a piccolo or a 13-inch cranked up. You can get that also in the same snare. Then you add whatever your dampening of choice is. You can use moon gels, sticky fingers, dots, whatever your choice is. And you have that whole timbre of ring, no ring. You can flip the snares off, and you have, especially again with the trick strainer, where you have 3 potential settings. You have all those different snare ranges. You have, if you flip them off, you have almost 10 different toms. All of that in one snare drum. It gives you almost an infinite type of possibilities. And that's why I've kind of converted to only using WTS for everything. And hopefully you'll see that in some of the videos later.
So you think it's more of a studio snare, or you think it's more of like an out playing, like a gigging snare?
It's both, because you can have multiple, like I said, let's call it 15 snares in one. That's being generous because it's probably fairly infinite. You can get it both. Because you can tune it so easily, you can tune it to a song like a lot of producers like to do, especially with snares. Not just the kit that we mentioned earlier, but with the snares. You can very quickly change with loose snares, tight snares, tom sounds. You can fit almost any situation. Live, I like it because I can tune up and down between songs, right? With the variety band I was talking about earlier. In the studio, you may not need that versatility, but I know I used to go to studio sessions with 3 or 4 snares, right? What's going to fit the song best? Is it going to be a metal snare? Is it going to be a wood snare? Do I need a 7-inch or an 8-inch deep snare because it's a deeper kind of tune, or do I need something a little more articulate? So instead of bringing 3 or 4 snares and letting a producer choose, you can really bring one and cover the spread.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll think about these is just the change in the heads. Well, we changed over 3 heads this morning in probably less than 5 minutes, just changing them over. That's the only thing I feel like is an issue, and it's not an issue.
It's hard to get used to, and we didn't have the right tools. There's also a tool that
once you do it one time, it's just like putting on a string on a guitar. You don't want to pull it all the way through. You just hang it down enough, and then pull the slack out of it and tighten it up.
And there's a little bit of a learning curve. I won't lie, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you start playing the WTS, you're like, oh, crap, they were right. Because that's the same way I felt. I was like, it's a gimmick. And now I'm like, oh crap, now all the drums I play out are WTS. including a set very similar to this one, same wood, different sizes. I had my kit's in my kind of preferred sizes, but I think I'm gonna have Michael make me a little 18 by 15 bass because this is like the best sounding bass I've ever heard.
It's punchy because you was changing out the beaters. You
Yeah.
just playing some of the different types of beaters right here.
Yeah, here I got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about this one? Did you play that one?
The hammer? No, we did not play the hammerhead beater. I do not recommend. Do not recommend the hammerhead beater. That's probably a little too much.
It would go straight through your head.
This is my favorite that I've been using for all the videos we did, just to kind of straight. Again, these are Outlaw beaters. Most of these, I think, are all prototypes. Admittedly, not the true Fellner or
the mushroom style
the
beaters
hammerhead
is the
beater,
ones that we kind of. That's the ones that are the most consistent that we sell
Yeah.
the most of because it's flat on one side
and then the slight angle at the other just
Yep.
really gives that full
pop.
Yeah.
Like when you was playing that pecan beater, that
Yeah.
kick drum was moving all the way across the side of it. I was just like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
going back to like when you first started playing the drums. So if you could go back and change some things as far as like do things differently now, is there anything that you would do differently as far as like developing your craft more to where you're at now? Because you're an amazing drummer, and I was just telling you to play different styles of drumming, and you was being able to go from blues to jazz to rock to all kinds of country just by changing. Just by that, did you practice that kind of genre? How'd you start with that?
There's two questions. We'll answer the second first. I'm a fan of all things music. And it really started with, I've always kind of been a rock guy at the core, but I started in school bands. I did the orchestral and school band drumming. I joined jazz band when I was a freshman in high school and played that through college. So really learned to study everything. And when I started taking private lessons at about 13 years old, it was very much, here's all the styles to at least get exposure. And then as I progressed in education, I progressed learning more and more styles as part of that, right? School jazz bands were great because they always said, okay, we're going to have multiple styles. We're going to have jazz. We're going to have some Latin beats, things like that. Where the biggest regret I have in my own playing as a drummer was I did not take another instrument growing up. I should have learned piano. It wasn't until I had a second drum teacher who really changed my life as far as understanding the theory and the melody side of things really opens up your playing. So when I started to learn more about theory and music and things like that, it actually opened up the playing and how to match with things, how to match with what's going on, how to avoid the vocals or how to comp the bass and things like that to really understand that full musicality of it. That came later to me than I wish it had. I was always, I want to be a progressive rock drummer. Now I just want to be a rock drummer, like just that groove and feeling groove more than anything. The other big thing for me was really honing in my timing, learning to play with a click. Like almost every band I join now, I encourage them playing with a click in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying you have to be rigid and like on perfect timing, but playing with a click or playing around a click so you're in time but feel like a human.
Yeah.
That was I think the biggest skill I've developed in the last however many years.
Good, man. Hey, what about this snare drum you was playing for Mr. Jones over here? Mr. Jones, you're in the chat right now? Are you in the chat, Mr. Jones?
No, isn't that his over here?
No, this is right here.
Oh, I thought that was his.
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's somebody else's?
That's somebody else's.
Oh,
yeah.
that's somebody else's.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that was,
Yeah.
I didn't know that one was sold.
Yeah. He's on the chat right now.
Oh.
Yeah. Tell me what you think about that.
Oh, man.
Snare
I
drum.
love this snare. So I didn't know this was sold. And I was saying we should take this up to one of our dealers in Atlanta to sell because we were playing this earlier. And I was like, wow. And I shouldn't be because this is one of our pine stave. And it just sounded so good. nothing special about it other than the Outlaw quality, but it's fairly thick pine shell. Michael can talk more about the construction where we're using stave ply. Good, really good response. Has a G1. Interestingly enough, I'm not normally a G1 person. I like a thicker 2-ply head, so I use HD dries or G2s on most of my snares. But on this snare, it sounded so good, so articulate. I was just like, I didn't realize this was one of the brand new ones. I thought this had been sitting around for a while.
Read the inside of it. I laser engraved it.
I just saw that when I looked at that. Is awesome.
Yeah.
Signed and laser engraved, so specifically for Mr. Jones. No Counting Crows references here.
Mr. Jones.
I love Counting Crows.
I do too.
One of my number one drum songs. The song I start whenever I start a practice session, like we were talking about earlier, is Counting Crows song. I'm not knocking it, but no, it was super articulate. Had really good overtones that gave a lot of character, but were easily controlled with just like a half a moon gel or the dots that you have.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I also love this finish. So those of you who haven't seen my kit, it is the Outlaw Forest Fire finish. This is essentially the same thing, but on a like a little bit more natural. It's a newer, lighter pine than mine is. So mine's a little more orange.
Oh, you know what I did with that one too? Then I put glaze as a darker glazing
glaze.
compound, and I torched it probably a little bit more.
It looks so good.
The grain's going vertical, and
you've got like the knots, but in the way that just looks so good and doesn't affect the snare. Like it just looks killer, and I guess that means I can't take it to the drum shop to try to sell. But no, this is I love this drum. We were doing our quality control checks earlier.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, we're gonna figure it out, man. We'll figure it out.
Figure what out?
We'll figure it out.
Aren't you sending it to him?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, man. Any more questions? What do you think, man? What's something that we ain't talked about yet? I'll take a little water break.
Yeah. My Cokes. I need my caffeine.
I brought you water.
Oh, I got this. It's all good. I don't know. You tell me. What else can we talk about?
Y'all got a question in the chat right here? Yeah, Danny, he's been like a lot of times. He's the one that you talk to on Facebook and on the website sometimes. He's been on there. He's on the website and been helping Outlaw Drums for probably 4 years. Yeah. Appreciate you, man. The live's making you feel better. Heck yeah, dude. Positivity, man. Good vibes going out, bro. You know, life is tough right now. Life is tough, and just getting able to kind of let things go. That's why I like drumming. Like, because drumming is in a sense a form of meditation.
It is a therapy. Absolutely.
When you go to start playing the drums, you let everything go, and you're completely concentrated on that particular space. Because if you're not, you're gonna be lagged. If you think about it, you're off. You know, that's like you were talking about. Even the stick differences can make you be off just enough to where it's like what you were saying.
Yeah, when you use a different stick, we were talking about. I had a pair of sticks in my bag, but I was using Michael's yesterday when we were just jamming around, and you don't realize when the stick is so much lighter, your hands are faster just naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not careful, you start rushing. Your stroke is different, right? You know your fingers are used to certain rebounds, and it's amazing how weird it feels once you've found your stick that kind of settles into your playing style.
Because it's easy to be off just a little bit, even though you're on. You can still be just a little bit of the what do they call it?
A hair behind or a hair ahead,
rushing or dragging just a little bit. I mean, it's just, and it's still there, but it's just like that noticeable, like on a studio where you can go in there and adjust it just a smidgen. Where live you can't.
Well, this is what I like to talk about. What I was mentioning earlier with playing with the click and playing around the click, but not rigid to where it feels mechanical. In the studio, even I'll argue that, but in the studio, I can get it. You have to move a tiny bit. You know, I hate it. I hate being in the studio and watching like producers like, this is great. And then they have to move like every other thing. Like, I'm like, if a producer moves more than like 3 or 4 beats on what I'm doing, like, I feel like it wasn't a good take.
It's what the good take.
But they're like, no, this is awesome. And you're like, okay. But live, it doesn't have to be rigid. You can play with the click, just like you're saying. it might be if the beat's here, you might be a little ahead of it or a little behind it, but you're always playing in time.
Mm-hmm.
So your band's always together. If you play with tracks, you had mentioned it earlier. We do use tracks sometimes, and when you're using tracks, you really have to stay with it. You can still play with tracks and not be on the beat and play around it. Now, you'll get people who argue my theory, so that's okay too.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own. But you playing around the beat still is playing in time.
Yeah.
Now, you don't necessarily want to speed up and slow down all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're not rigidly on that click,
that's where
it's
it goes
okay.
into putting the work in, putting the practice in, right?
Yep.
Where you're really practicing with the metronome
Yep.
beforehand and working it, playing for a length of time, like 5 or 10 minutes. Play something for 5 minutes straight. And on time
with the click,
with the click is a workout, and that's
have
that's
your
what gets you a
guitarist
good
do
drummer.
it too.
Yeah, guitarist is bad about that too. Be kind of going because that's when you're strumming on that. A lot of times, if you're not putting that kick down to that,
or if they have licks, one of the things that I'm working with my band right now is my guitarist is phenomenal, but he struggles when he starts songs. And with this band, most bands I've had the click and the rest of the band doesn't. But what that means is when a guitarist starts a song, you always have that hi-hat going next to it. So our band leader, our singer, wanted everyone to have the click so that the guitarist and whomever's playing can play directly to it. Our guitarists struggle sometimes with keeping with the click. Get them to do it now. Also, just get them to
because
get
they can't
used
try to
it.
blame it on the drummer. The drummer's off. No,
Hey,
the guitar player's off.
I had a gig once where I was playing with the click, a previous band, and I kept the click in my ear. No one else wanted it. And the guitar player kept telling me I was off. And I was like, I am not off. I'm on a click. You are not.
You got to blame it on somebody.
I left that band shortly thereafter because he was a fill-in who I was going to have to do 3 or 4 more shows with. I'm like, nope. He was not the kindest of people.
Yeah. So, any more questions? Anybody got any more drummer questions, man? We're in here answering questions live on a podcast. We got some trolls hanging out in here. Welcome, trolls. TikTok, you know what they do? They actually block a lot of folks' comments. They do. They won't even let them comment.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm
still behind the times. I have not gone to TikTok
when they
yet.
do it too.
Hi, Pepper. Oh,
most of my friends, and that's what I think that do. Like people here at Outlaw Drums, we're all musicians, man, and it's like you got to have that because I think you communicate better. Having somebody that's not a drummer build drums, that would kind of be kind of weird, wouldn't it? I mean, there are a lot of folks that do that, but yeah, I feel like we're definitely trying. And like I said, with the giveaways and the raffles, we're fixing to do a raffle with this bad boy right here. Super excited about that. And so we got a conclusion, Danny. What conclusion do we have?
Conclusion. Drums.
We're already 54 minutes into it.
Damn, that was fast.
It's an hour. We've already been talking for an hour, not counting what we've done earlier today.
That was fast.
It was fast.
What else can we answer for the people, or you and I can just talk about on camera for another 30 minutes?
How do you set your mics for full body kick sound? Is what guy asked.
Ooh. So when I do it, I'm lucky enough that most of the producers I work with do all that stuff because I'm not as good at it. But I have in my own studio either a 52 beta that I do kind of half in, half out on the kick. And I also have a sub kick. It's not the Yamaha sub kick. I can't remember the brand, but it's a great little sub kick that I'll kind of blend the two when I do it myself. And then as Michael and I were talking about, I cheat and I use some Waves plugins to really help dial in the sound because they have some great like pre-done stuff. Hopefully next time maybe we can get my brother, who is an incredible producer. He is super picky about sounds. He's the one who really gets them. But a lot goes to the drums and the sound and tone of the drums. This little tiny kick, which I don't know who can see it here, like we were playing earlier, it just has a lot of body and a lot of punch. And that just goes to the testament of the drums that Michael makes are just killer.
Yeah. I think set the mics anywhere and then just kind of get your the Logic to take all the overtones out.
Does Logic do the work for you?
I'm horrible about sounding the mics, man. A lot of times I'm on the fly and I'm having to do like 5 jobs at once and going through here and measuring all, because they are posted. They measured how far these got to be, and that I try to kick my kick drum right into the port of the head, and not too much to where. But there's compressors and effects you can put on there to kind of help with a lot of the sound with it, because it's very difficult and very expensive to get the proper mics and the proper compressors and everything that can make it sound good right out the rip. Yeah. But there is a plugins. That's what you was calling it.
Yeah,
plugins.
Waves.com makes some really amazing plugins.
Waves.com
to help dial in your tone. That was a trick taught to me by my producer brother. I would have never known, but again, most of the time the producers and engineers take care of that for me. I play the drums; they make them sound pretty. That's kind of the way I go to it. I will tell you, live, one of the things that I do a lot that I get a lot of good feedback from engineers. Live, I don't put any padding in any of my kicks. I use the Evans EMAD heads, and that way it gives just enough muffling, but there is tone to that drum that they just have to put a tiny bit of EQ, and you get that big thud, that tone that just gets choked off when you put pillows in and things like that. And then combined with the drum itself, you got to have quality drums to do that.
Yeah.
But
I'm a fan of taking out all the cymbals. Take out all the cymbals, because cymbals are so freaking hard to mix into the mic. They do. They bleed off everything. They bounce around. It's minimal cymbals makes the drum sound better. The guys that come over to play, they got them big old cymbal bags. I'm like, oh Lord, here we go.
I have both, so I can't say. But there are a lot of producers now who will put towels over the cymbals, and you do a pass of the drums with cymbals being toweled, so you can't really hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you switch it, and you essentially put either silent heads on the drums or towels on the drums, and you're really just recording the overheads to keep them separate. I get it. That's when, to me, that's getting too technical. I like the
you might as well just get an electric kit.
Yeah, I like the room type of drum feel where you've got a little bit of everything. I understand from engineers that it's harder. I really do. But there's something about the natural sound of the drums when you just kind of record everything together. I mean, hell, Bonham used 3 mics. It was a 3 mic situation that recorded almost every Led Zeppelin album.
For
real. So those sounded pretty good.
They're real flat sounding. Flat, flat, do.
Yeah,
that's what folks like. That's what they do. That's what a lot of people like. They like it. It just kind of moves out of the way real quick, just does its job, and then it doesn't linger in, because you get drums that are too open. It's almost kind of too well mic'd up. It's just the frequencies are all over the place.
I like the open drums, which I get it.
I do too. I like the song, because I being the type of drummer that you are, when you hit that tom, you want it to kind of resonate into the next note a little bit.
I want to feel it. I want to feel it here.
Yeah. I'll do like when you hit it and you kind of feel it right there in your chest. Is any favorite albums that you prefer, like the snare drum sound on? Like one of my favorite ones is probably going to be like the 311 Amber. That song right there.
Sections, it's a great.
That ring on that snare. I wish I knew exactly what type of snare that was, but it sounds to me like it's a 13 tuned up, super cranked.
I think he actually used a piccolo, but I did know that at one point in time. I have a picture of somebody I know who was actually behind his kit. Now that wouldn't have been the recorded one, but the kit he plays it on now. I'll see if I can dig it up.
Yeah. And then Spoon Man, I like that one too.
I love Soundgarden, love Matt Cameron and all of his work, especially the last all Pearl Jam albums. Man, heard the new Pearl Jam single and it is killer. I don't know specific sounds. I know, like, of some of the more modern bands that I really like to listen to. My favorite right now is probably Hailstorm and RJ Hale from a drummer perspective. In love with that band. from a drummer perspective, and I will always see them whenever I can. Drum sound, performance, showmanship, Seven Dust and Morgan Rose are some of my favorites. They get some amazing sounds on their album out of the drums he plays too. But yeah, I've never been one specifically on an album where I'm like, ooh, that's the snare sound I want.
Yeah.
I find snares I like and I get them to sound the way I want, and that's kind of what I go for.
Yeah.
But my brother asks me that all the time. He's like, I want it to sound like this snare, and then I'll
Yeah.
have to listen to it.
I hear a lot of drummers asking me about that too. Like, those are some popular ones that kind of,
Yeah.
The one headlight one is another one, real pingy.
Yeah.
Headlight, I don't know the name.
Wallflowers.
Wallflowers, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one there.
That is a really good one.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. What drummer do you think is the most influential to you? Like a drummer, like if you had to just name one drummer, or maybe two.
I can't do one or two. I could probably narrow it down to 4 or 5.
What about the first one that come up?
Well, the first one will always be Neil Peart. The Professor has always been my idol. Not just drums, but being able to be a drummer, an intellectual, a writer, that was always huge to me, because I was always, even in some of the bands, I was always the guy, kind of like the old Rush stories. They're out while I'm sitting like reading a book or doing work and that sort of stuff. So he will always be my number one influence, but again, well beyond just the drums. Morgan Rose, who I just mentioned, is very high on that list as well. I've had the good fortune of meeting Morgan with a few times. The other question I get a lot, which is the one who's not normally on in even my top 5, but the question I get a lot is, what drummer do you most think you're like? Like, what well-known drummer? And that's the one that gets me. And then I'll go back to the other question, and that is actually, and I get to see him next week, is Scott Phillips of Alter Bridge and Creed. Someone asked me that question about a year ago, and I had no idea. I didn't really think about it. And then I went and saw Seven Dust and Alter Bridge together, and I'm watching Scott Phillips play, and I'm like, oh, he's like exactly like me. Like, that's who my playing is most like, because he can play anything. He's a fantastic drummer. I told him I was like, it's like if you see me playing, it's like Scott Phillips without the tattoos. Like, so he's the one who I think I identify most with. But again, influential, Neil Peart, Morgan Rose, Josh Freese has always been very, very, very high on that list. Again, we were talking about versatility, talking about a guy who can literally play anything from jazz to metal and play it extraordinarily well. Like, that just to me is a skill that it's always what I've kind of aspired to. So it would probably be the top. Danny Carey is one of my favorite, although I just get mad watching and listening to him play, because I just don't see how some of the stuff he does is humanly possible. But it amazes me. So that's up there. But a lot of the studio cats that, again, understanding how important just groove is, and that straight ahead. Joey Warnker from a studio perspective, the Jim Keltners of the world, Rich Redmond stuff with variety of artists, but Jason Aldean, just being able to just knock things out left and right. That's what I really kind of like and aspire to these days.
I heard that. Mine kind of changes. Mine does changes. I didn't ever grow up a drummer like you did, and I didn't really start playing the drums till I was like my, almost late 20s. So I just I just literally was always tapping on something. Like, I just knew that I was going to be able to play the drums someday,
Yeah.
Then when I sat behind a kid, it's like, it feels good. You knew it. It clicks with you. Yeah.
Oh, and Mike Portnoy. I can't skip out on mentioning Mike Portnoy, who was also hugely influential to me when I was younger. Like, so excited that he rejoined Dream Theater, but I've seen him with 3 or 4 bands, and he's just incredible. And it's weird because I forget, because I've kind of moved past progressive rock, but I still love it, that like I start thinking of the straight ahead drummers. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to play everything Dream Theater when I was growing up. Like that was everything. So I'd be remiss if I did not mention him.
Yeah, I heard that, man. Cool, man. Cool. Well, bro, I just want to thank you, man, for being on the podcast show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It has definitely been fun, man. And
You've been standing the whole time. That's impressive for a podcast.
yeah, I stand all day anyhow. Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much, man. Anything else you want to add to it?
No, I'm glad I've been out here. Please come buy more Outlaw Drums so I can buy more drums and we can buy more hardware and stuff.
We talked about the raffle, didn't we?
We talked about the drum and that is going to be the plan for the next raffle that we do.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it or if you're interested, we just decided yesterday, and let me rephrase that. Michael decided because I think this drum should be sold because this drum is amazing. So whomever is going to get this drum is going to get well beyond the worth. And you'll see a lot of clips coming. We played it this morning. There are some clips. I think I have them on my YouTube. If not, we'll share them to Michael's YouTube of kind of a session we did. It was really going to be the promo work for the WTS Maverick series and showing like the versatility. So we've got some of that.
So guys, just want to say thank you so much for hanging out and listening to the entire episode of the Outlaw Process podcast. Special thanks goes out to all of our Patreons. Thank you so much, guys, over there. Love you guys so much. Also, thank you for everything else. We're doing the drum raffle here. And for the next month, you're probably going to be seeing some content of this drum raffle. And this is going to be the first one we've ever raffled off of a Welch tuning snare drum. And I'm very excited about it. And I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there and supporting the channel, subscribing, doing your part. God bless you. God bless you. And until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.